Today, I'm testing vintage housewife recipes to see if these old school dishes still deliver on flavor or if they're better left in the past. 1920, probably one of the most iconic dishes of that time was the Waldorf Salad. It represented elegance, indulgence, and it's made up of just vegetables and fruits. So it was the era of partying, only if you were rich though. Otherwise, you would have to sneak into someone's basement with alcohol probably made in the bathtub. But here's the Waldorf Salad. Okay, it's basically made up of 4 components: apples, celery, grapes, and pistachios. So basically a fruit salad. But in the 1920s, housewives were basically running the show at home. They were responsible for making meals at home from scratch, child rearing, housekeeping. They were basically the CEO of their families. So this salad was actually invented for all the party goers and the guests at the Waldorf Astoria, which is a really famous and high-end luxury hotel in New York City. And then they actually smothered all of this in a mayo-based dressing. So basically it's mayo, sugar, a little salt, and then to bring out the zinginess, some lemon juice. Gotta add our chopped nuts. I wonder if this is where the ambrosia salad of the 50s came from or was inspired from, except I think they used it with Cool Whip or marshmallow fluff. This sure is the cat's pajamas. So this itself was their salad, but I feel like it belongs on more of a bed of greens like this. Now that's a salad. Mayo with fruit, strange things I've tried in my life. Check. Not my favorite, but this is very similar to our modern day chicken salad, which with the protein makes it so much better. These dishes were the signs of their times, and I'm not sure if I'd like to go back to the roaring 20s. Either way, I live in the land of housewives, and let's just say they've had a little bit of a glow up. These days, the kitchen isn't exactly their domain, but back in the day, they were busy cooking up some wild concoctions, so keep watching to see what other culinary creations they came up with. Welcome to the 1940s, a time when food was scarce because of the war and families had to ration basically all the food that they had. And one of the most popular ingredients that came into production is Spam. It has a long shelf life, it's cheap, and it doesn't require any refrigeration. I like that jelly layer. They marketed this as a meat-like product. What's in here? You know what? We're not even gonna look. It's just tastes good. They would turn this one loaf into, instead of a meatloaf, a Spam loaf, where they just dress it up on top. But a typical meal would look like this. If you look at it, it does look like meat. Spam is basically already cooked meat, and I'm just frying it up to really release the flavors. It's probably a lot more rice than they actually got. And this was a meal of the 1940s. A lot of the really cheap ingredients were served in bulk. You got sad peas, and then of course your Spam. We've all had Spam and rice before. Roll on an egg, and that's like pretty good breakfast. I'll even take the side of peas. But this is a dish that has transcended the decades and is probably here to stay. 8 out of 10. And now we're entering the 1950s. I feel like the most iconic dish of the 1950s was probably the pineapple upside down cake. That's pretty much all I know, and it was the peak of housewifery era, where you actually saw them in the kitchen and making things. Post-war and pre-60s liberation. So I found this TikTok from a 1952 Better Homes and Garden cookbook that shows us how to make it. So I feel like their techniques are also a little unusual, but we're gonna go with it. First, you pour in some melted butter directly into your baking pan, and then you mix together brown sugar. This is interesting. I feel like this doesn't get the butter mixed all through, but saves an extra dish to wash. Now we're supposed to spread it all out. I'll use my hands. I guess this part makes the caramel layer. It's not very even. Okay, and then next step, I have to cut my pineapple slices in half. I feel like this was also the era where canned foods started becoming part of everyday life, and you get preserved fruits like this. Okay, so you need 4 slices, and they want them cut in half. Why don't we just leave it whole? And then now we place them around the pan, but still arrange in whole pieces like this. And then we need maraschino cherries, and I'm supposed to cut them in 4s and then arrange them in the center with 3 pieces. Cute. And then inside of each get some. It's a very complicated way of doing it. Why wouldn't I just add halves? I'll just decorate the rest of the cake, make it look pretty. Tastes like a sundae. Okay, now I'm supposed to sift the dry ingredient over softened shortening. You don't see this used very much these days. Whoa. And I need a 1/3 of a cup. Now I sift the dry ingredients together over everything, so we have enriched flour. Is this like all-purpose flour of their times? Sugar, baking powder, and salt. So far, pretty easy. A lot of the recipes that I see online are all kind of more like cake mixes over from scratch. Only thing that I wouldn't use is the Crisco. All butter would be so much better. Now I have to add in 1/2 cup of the remaining pineapple syrup, grated lemon peel, and an egg. And this feels very vintage, hand mixer. This cake batter looks so dense. Okay, now I pour this over the pineapples. Okay. It's actually not so bad once I transfer it. Back in the day, this cake was a little bit of a showstopper. Just with the technique and the way that it's baked, the beautiful design is at the bottom and then you have to flip it over to reveal the vibrant colors, hence pineapple upside down cake. And then I bake this for 45 minutes. And then our brown sugar layers should melt and caramelize. It's so interesting the way that recipes were written in cookbooks in the 50s too. Let's see here, let me try to. Is this supposed to just dump out? I'm gonna help it out by digging into it a little bit. I wouldn't say it smells very good the way that freshly baked cake smells, but let's do a cake reveal. Ooh, it looks pretty from the top. How come it's not, oh. There you go. Crap, I lost a pineapple. Oh! Okay. Ah, hot sugar. I'll just spread it back on. I failed as a housewife. So I thought the brown sugar would melt and caramelize, but it just stayed as its own layer. There's no bakery smell. There's no vanilla smell. There's no like freshly baked cake wafting through the house smell. It looks pretty though. The texture of the cake kind of reminds me of Bisquick a little bit. I'm not gonna lie, it's not the best. It's a little bland. You do get a little bit of the pineapple flavor, but not really. The texture is perfect, but I think more flavoring would go a really long way. But for the 50s and for what they had, not bad. 8 out of 10. Feeling so groovy. Flower power. Welcome to the 1960s, where women were expected to be perfect domestic suburban housewives. And this was a time where Jell-O molds became a cultural icon. Jell-O symbolized convenience, creativity, you can say that again, and visual appeal in the home. That's why they always had these crazy molds. I would say mine is a little modest, but sometimes they were stacked up high like a wedding cake, filled with things. I almost want to say anything that they can find, even SpaghettiOs. And today I found a recipe that contains very questionable items. So let me just get right on into it. First things first though, we have to make our Jell-O. And lime was super popular. And I don't know if it's popular because of the flavor or just like the atomic green color that it gave off. Okay, we're gonna mix it with some boiling water and some cold water. Boiling water first, and then I have to dissolve it. We're gonna let the Jell-O hang out while I prepare the filling that's gonna go into this mold with the Jell-O. In this recipe called Ring Around the Tuna. Yes, you heard right. Ring Around the Tuna. It's made with lime jelly, tuna, stuffed olives, onion. Can't have a tuna salad without celery, and a tomato. I mean, all of these together doesn't sound so bad, but I went digging a little bit to see why everything during this time was put in a Jell-O mold. When gelatin came out, it was considered a luxury food. People from money would put almost anything in it just because they used gelatin to preserve food that was going bad, just so they wouldn't waste. This means any food that could go in gelatin did. It's likely that this combination was popular at the time this specific book came out. It came out in 1962 and it was called The Joys of Jell-O. The price of these food were really cheap. But now, does it actually taste good? I also wonder if they have the convenience of food choppers like these in the 60s. I mean, there's no real recipe here, so I'm just eyeballing. I mean, how fine are we supposed to chop these up here? Maybe pretty fine so it's a little more palatable. Oh wait, I forgot to add the tomato. Okay, let's give it one last chop. And now we have to spray the mold and just add our ingredients in. What a delight. And then our salad component. Probably gonna have to stir this around a little bit more too. Well, let's pour in our Jell-O. Oh, it definitely mixes through very well with the green Jell-O. Wow, look at those chunks. So are these gonna float or are they gonna sink to the bottom? I feel like I could add a little bit more, really drive home that flavor. Well, I'm going to refrigerate this and we'll move on to the next era. Groovy. The the 70s, where women opted out of the kitchen and into the workforce and discotheques. Processed and convenience foods started taking over the kitchen. Fresh food and the stay-at-home housewife began to fade, paving the way for a new era of quick, easy meals like the casserole. One pot, wham bam, and in the oven, thank you ma'am, it's done. So I'm gonna make one that was pretty popular on TikTok that they still make today. It's a beef tater tot hot dish. Okay, we start by just cooking up the beef, salt and pepper. I mean, I would have sauteed some onion, maybe a little garlic first for some flavor. I'm gonna add in our cream of mushroom. Cream of mushroom these days, the only time that I see people using them are for green bean casseroles during Thanksgiving. But other than that, I don't really see it being used in a ton of recipes. Awesome, awesome. Now I see a layer of fat from the meat mixed in with the cream of mushroom. You just get like a layer of fat on top of this. Everything was dumped into a beautiful casserole pan like this. I am loving the vintage vibes here. Maybe not so much the gray food, the beige color food. After that, we top it with some cheddar cheese and some tater tots. Or in this case, tater puffs. With this dish, I noticed that the tater tots are always beautifully arranged across, so I'm gonna try to do that. Tina, eat your tots. Don't have time to cook, but I got time to arrange. I might not make it. Oh dear. Well, you guys get the idea. Okay, let's bake this off, and I have another 70s surprise. Since life was a party in the 1970s, punch bowls were a big deal. Everything was very communal and entertainment based, and food was all made out of convenience. So I found this floating island punch recipe that starts with these lemonade and orange juice frozen concentrate. It calls for the entire thing. So if you guys are not familiar with frozen concentrate, people back in the day used to buy these cans in the frozen aisle, throw them in a pitcher, like one of those Tupperware pitchers, and then fill them up with water to make juice. It was a more economical way instead of buying like real fruit juice. So then for this punch bowl, instead of adding water to dilute the fruit concentrate, they add ginger ale and apple juice. The ratio is more ginger ale than apple juice, although I don't even know if it makes a difference. Let me give it a quick mix. So various punch bowls would add fruit slices, other things, maybe even jello, I don't even know. But this one calls for rainbow sherbet. Yes, that's right. Ooh, makes sense. It has that psychedelic swirl. And these are the islands. You plop them in and they float like little islands. Ooh. Because it was a party, they would lay these cups out all around. Just imagine there's like 10 of these. I only have 2. So they either scoop them directly in here, which kind of makes a mess, or you can scoop them with the punch bowl spoon, which I'll do. Just get some floating islands in there. So many flavors all at once. Sour from the lemonade, fizzy from the ginger ale, and really sweet from the ice cream. I know this is a sugar bomb, but it's actually really good. 7 out of 10. Here is our sizzling hot dish. Casserole. Something like this should definitely be served with a side of peas. Got our sizzling hot meat with a lot of grease. Awesome. It's actually not bad. Throw in a little ketchup and I'd say it's a pretty decent meal, but I would say this is one that could probably stay in the 70s because we can do better than that these days. 6 out of 10. Welcome to the 90s. Girl power. We're the most popular chef in the kitchen was Chef Boyardee. Moms were fully in the workforce, and modern conveniences like canned foods, rice-a-roni, Lunchables, DiGiorno, lean cuisine took over the kitchen. Basically, whatever a kid can heat up on their own while the moms and dads were at work goes. I remember these from my childhood. SpaghettiOs and Chef Boyardee's were always stocked in our pantry. For old time's sake, let's cook up some broccoli cheddar rice-a-roni. So a typical meal in the 90s was kind of semi-homemade. I remember seeing a ton of these commercials for rice-a-roni, and the plate always looked something like this. So you start with some butter, melt it, and then you saute up the rice that's paired with pasta. I've always wondered about this. My parents, being a Vietnamese household, just cooked good old white rice. Meals in the 90s or 2000s usually came together in about 30 minutes or less, and this pack package of rice takes only 15 minutes to cook. What's in here? There's a lot of stuff for just rice, and then I noticed there's niacinamide in here. That's the stuff I put on my face these days. You know that saying on how millennials look younger than Gen Z? I wonder if it's all the preservatives. Oh my gosh, it looks like mac and cheese powder. And then pour in the water and just let it cook for 15 minutes. It's a very cheesy, creamy rice sauce. Is it done? Ooh, it actually looks really good. So a typical plate in the 90s was all about the chicken breast and lemon pepper. They love their low-fat foods paired with some steamed broccoli that was sprayed with some margarine. Yeah, they literally made, I can't believe it's not butter, sprays. We'll add our rice-a-roni, and that was your most 90s meal. But wait, I need to get something. Jell-O is still all the rage in the 90s, and I need to unmold this. Let's give our meal a try. It's cheesy. Chicken breast is not my favorite. It tends to get a little dry and rubbery. That can stay in the 90s. I'll give it a 7 out of 10. I'm oddly excited about this Jell-O mold. The Jell-O has landed. Oh my gosh. A tuna surprise, all right. It's so jiggly. I'm scared. Oh my gosh. What does it look like inside? It looks like the tuna chunks kind of fell down, and then the top, or I guess the bottom now, is where all of the vegetables landed. This might go down as one of the weirdest things I've ever eaten. Belong in Jell-O, first of all. 1 out of 10. If you like this video, go watch me test controversial trad wives recipes. And if you want to cook real meals, go check out my Patreon page at patreon.com/honeysuckle, where you can get exclusive video tutorials and a monthly recipe booklet, plus special giveaways for you to become the queen of your kitchen. Holy moly, that was so gross.